I am fascinated by the subject matter tonight. I know nothing about it, which is going to make it fun for everybody. My major goal tonight during the show is not to say astrology, because for both 2 times in preparation for the show I've said astrology, but we're talking about astronomy. And let me tell you, it's a mind blower for me. I actually get tentative when we talk about things like this, because I start to try to figure out God, universe, human, blah, 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 and it gets really weird. But I'm fascinated to do this. By the way, no rundown this evening. If you're conditioned for me to knock off 5 or 6 or 7 things that are part of my state of mind, this is one of those programs that we've pre-produced and could air on a vacation or an off day, or my tummy hurts or something. But this show will air multiple times, I know already. We're just beginning it because it's so fascinating. So let me get into it. Here is just an example of what we're going to be talking about. Here are the original blueprint plans, and then the observatory that Pete Peterson put together. We originally learned about Pete in a Providence Journal story, and he was quite the whippersnapper when he was young, reportedly. He got into this whole telescope thing. By the way, we've got a piece of equipment here just to make the show pop a little bit. Reportedly, Pete, there was a pretty hot chick that lived next door, and you went and
boy.
Hey, are we not supposed to believe everything we read in the newspapers? You were 9 years old, doing the old innocent peeping Tom thing, and you said, hey, wait a second, there's stars up there. Is that what happened?
Well, when that didn't work, I looked at the moon instead, and I was hooked.
Oh, that's great stuff. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, or thanks for coming in. And Tom Hannigan is a buddy of his that works in this, and let's get the organization straight. It's the Astrology Society of Southern New England. You guys are, well, I did it again. See, I just did it for astronomy.
We do readings on Saturday nights.
By the time we're done, you may just have to.
May have to.
Thanks, guys, for coming in. I really appreciate it. This is a fascinating subject matter. I will tell you, while I don't think anybody who ever gets a chance to look at the stars through a telescope or any of that comes away uninterested. Yet not a lot of people get what's going on in this business, right? Sort of? Kind of?
Well,
in a way?
It depends. I mean, there are a lot of people who, I mean, you might just as well call it the Astrological Society instead of the Astronomical Society, because a lot of people read horoscopes and give it some credence and some not. But there's really actually no, in one's everyday life, to give much credence to what's going on in the sky, other than some natural wonder. But I think as you move away from the city and you get out of the suburbs, and you get out at night and start to see what the sky really looks like, one becomes quickly fascinated.
Absolutely, no doubt. So we're going to break up the conversation here in a couple different parts. Pete, you built this incredible structure in your backyard. Tell us the short version of the story, and we'll figure out why.
The why is the setup and the teardown. You're talking about very large pieces of equipment, very heavy pieces of equipment, and an hour or more of setup, and then alignment, and then to do more than visual observing, you've got to bring out computer connections and computers and cameras and align everything again.
Well, there's an example. Just put this up.
Of on the left is one of my more recent telescopes, and you can see how I'm kind of dwarfed by that. And having to carry that down 2 flights of stairs and then in again at night was kind of tough.
Okay, so to shorten up this part of it, because there's so much to talk about, you'd lug equipment out to look at the sky. So you had to build a garage for it, more or less, right? And that's what an observatory is.
That's essentially what you've got there.
All right,
sure.
so we've got some video of that as well. Can we show that, Jess, or tell me what you want to see? This is the Wishing Star Observatory, which is in Pete's backyard, and there he is. Just shot these recently prior to our production of the show, so this is modern video, if you will. And what is it, 10 by 10? But you can throw 11 people in there if they want to, right?
We can fit 11 people around the bench circuit seating.
That's a cool look right there.
Around the edge there, yeah.
That's a really cool look. So that telescope that you've got there is super powerful, correct?
Well, they're super powerful, and then they're super powerful.
Which one is yours?
What I've got to the third power, because the human eye works like a camera, and all you've got is that little black pupil in your eye. That's your lens. Now, when you take a telescope, all of a sudden your eye is the size of the telescope lens. So
Okay.
you can increase the eye diameter 1,000-fold, or the area. And if you would use film, film doesn't, you can leave the camera open and you'll have, instead of a 30th of a second that the eye functions at, you can hold the camera lens open for a minute at a time and capture much more light, or photons. And with a digital camera that Tom uses and that I use, we cool that camera to maybe 30 degrees below, and it's ultra sensitive. It's 1,000 times more sensitive than the.
And that's Tom's camera. Tom, that's your
right,
equipment.
and just to the opposite side of when you were talking about a big lens on the telescope, I take that out with me when we travel, and I've gotten some of the images on that small setup. That basically what you're looking at is the camera's on top, and you can put a DSLR camera, you know, like a camera that you carry with a reflex lens, and on the bottom that device down there essentially tracks the rotation of the Earth, so that at the same time that the Earth's rotating, the stars are going by. So if you didn't have anything tracking the Earth at the same time, everything would streak in the camera. Am I making sense?
Yeah,
here?
no, it
Okay,
is.
so essentially what you do is you compensate for that with a little tracking device to compensate for the rotation of the Earth. But you can go out and take some really fantastic pictures with a pretty small setup.
All right, short answer on this, and then we'll expand when we come back. Your observatory is as high level as what in the astronomy world?
It has surpassed Mount Palomar where it was back in the 1950s with the 200-inch Hale telescope.
Which means, in layman's terms, you can see as far as
I have been
anybody
able
almost.
to see. I have been able to see more than 2/3 of the way to the end of everything.
Okay, that's when it gets really deep for me, and I have to regroup. But don't go anywhere. I told you this would be fascinating. 2/3 to the end of it all, whatever that is. Stay with us. That is Mr. Pete Peterson's observatory in Barrington. By the way, I don't want to rush on your house or your backyard. You invite people into your property to look at this situation from time to time, or what's the rules on that?
I mentor high school students who've done projects. For example, one student was studying the moon, and she did her senior project on the moon. The following year, a summer and a half later, I had a call from her. And she was calling from the Lunar Geology Lab at Brown, where she was doing her summer job. I had a student that worked on light pollution. Barrington now is converting to full cutoff streetlights so that we can see the stars better.
All right, but here's the thing: don't be crashing in the backyard without without permission. Okay, I just don't. You know what I'm saying? All right, this ain't Disney. This is real scientific work that's going on here. Tom is also a member of the Astronomy Society of Southern New England, and you're more digital photography versus telescopy, right? Okay. So let's talk about what we see out there. Now listen, you just blew everybody away with saying that your equipment has already gotten you 2/3 to the end of it all. What's on the other third? You don't know because you haven't seen it. Who's on first, third base, right? Really, what's out there, man? It's a mind blower.
You can't see past the beginning. We're seeing the microwave background out at 13.5 billion light years away. That's the beginning. We can't see past the beginning.
You were telling me in the break about the beginning.
Well, yes.
We all know fundamentally about the Big Bang theory.
So,
which is how many years ago?
13.5 billion years.
That's
is the
what
latest.
you're talking about.
Right.
So we judge time by what we see astronomically.
Actually, when you're looking through a telescope, you're looking back in time.
Yeah.
And when we look at some of Tom's images, he may be able to date them.
Okay. We'll throw them up as we can, but explain again.
Yeah. So
this relationship between time, space, and what you're looking at out there.
All right. So I'll do the best I can.
Yeah.
Sort of sub Einstein here, but
Yeah.
but it basically the Big Bang is an event, and where the universe began. where everything started. And so, of course, that calls, like you said earlier, about the questions of God and everything else, creating the universe, the great intelligence and everything else. But it's been pretty much established that the start became, at least for this universe, started at 13.5 billion years ago. When Pete mentioned that he saw 2/3 to the end, or 2/3 to the beginning, that he looked as far back as the light from that time allowed him for his instruments to pick up. In other words, his telescope was big enough and his camera was sensitive enough to capture the light that was coming from 7 billion years ago. That light started out 7 billion years ago, and it reached his camera the other night. Isn't that fascinating?
So are you looking at time
Yes.
7 billion years ago when you're seeing 2/3 all the way out?
You're looking at history whenever you look through a telescope. If you look at Saturn, you see as it was 2 hours ago. If you look at
The sun, 8 minutes
Oh,
ago.
I get it. No, seriously.
No, I understand.
Yeah, Laura's
There
over
you
there.
go.
She goes, he. No, I just got it. Okay, because the light travel to see Saturn takes 2 hours. What you see happened 2 hours ago.
Right.
If some
When you go 7 billion out,
That's 7 billion
I
years ago.
get it.
So now the
show's over.
Okay.
Okay.
So the
Thank
13
you.
and a half bit, so that extra 5 billion years, that's the part that's tough for people who have the telescopes like we do.
Now, you know what? I have to tell you,
So they measure
53
in
years on the
radio
planet.
waves.
Even with the class I took in astronomy, it wasn't. I never really understood this relationship. Get it? All right, I'll calm down. So show me some of these images.
Yeah.
Okay? So where is let me ask you something. Universe is at the top of what we're talking about. In other words, solar system, Milky Way is a galaxy.
Yeah.
How many galaxies are there
Billions.
500 billion approximately
in the universe?
in the
In
universe,
this,
and
in
each
this
galaxy.
in this universe.
And what about how? We don't know if there's other universes.
We don't know. Lisa Randall, who's an astrophysicist, supposes that the Big Bang was merely a bump of 2 universes, or 3 banging and intersecting and starting yet another one.
Mind blowing. Let me see this. Let me see. Just throw it up. What are these?
Now,
The
the one
Andromeda
on the-
Strain.
the-
Remember that was the big movie, right?
The Andromeda Strain, which was something completely different. That was a virus, I think,
Yeah,
at the
sorry.
time.
Right.
That's okay. The red light. I remember the woman.
Right.
The image on the left, the Andromeda Galaxy. Now that is, by latest calculations, 2.5 to 2.8 million light years away. It's our closest galaxy to us.
But there could be, like a guy
Yeah.
playing football in there.
There could be
Okay.
from 2.5, but with what I just saw, when I took that last summer, he was playing basketball 2.5 million years ago.
So he was using a peach basket.
At the very least.
In
Yeah.
current time, he might have been, supersonic, throwing the ball into a hoop that was modern. But you'll only see what was way back then.
Right, when you're
When
looking
will
out
we
that
be
far.
able to connect current to that space out
Well,
there?
even you looking at me in some very fractional ways is looking at each other in the past, because we have to wait for the light to come back to each other. I'm sorry to blow your mind like that, but that's how I got to be
I'm
where
not
I
talking
am
to you
today.
anymore. I'm just going to talk to Pete in the present, if that's okay with you.
I always like to think about some celestial beings turning the switch and the sun goes off, and it takes us 7 minutes before we know about it.
So show is over early, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No. You know what though? When we come back, I want. You know what? This is one of those shows I could do 10 of them with these guys, and we might be here production-wise until midnight. But I have to pause. We'll come back. I want to see what these guys and their faith is, the God faith thing in the middle of all this, because this is where it really gets sticky. Stay with us.
She tipped you off.
I'm having a ball, and now I'm going to get freaked out. Pete Peterson has got his observatory homemade, if you will, in his own backyard, and Tom Hannigan is part of the same astronomical organization. By the way, we've been putting up the .org for their website from time to time. You have information, community information, billboards, activities.
There is a website,
Yeah.
yes.
So-
And if you just look at ASSNE, for Astronomical Society of Southern New England,
It'll come up.
you find us all over the place.
All right. So, and we've got some photos of some events, community events, and things that go on. You know, it's so funny. I've had no self-interest in other words, I got to start looking at this astronomical thing. But what's phenomenal about the conversation, you guys are such good regular guys and great to talk with. It's a fascinating conversation. I guess once you get invested in this kind of interest, you're hooked, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that you know, you may leave it for a few years. You can leave it or leave it, but I found it.
For you, it's a hobby.
Yeah, but it's been a lifelong. It's been there lifelong. I started when I was around 12.
Okay, because you work in the hospital industry.
Yeah.
You were in the manufacturing industry, correct? Or
Yes,
had you,
yes.
And so this has been.
But this is almost like it's where I get my inner guidance. I have a friend who's a Mohegan Indian, and he once told me, "Speak softly when you meet me under the stars, for this is my church. This is where I pray." And I think all of us out under the stars think along those terms, and there are so many different philosophies that churn through your head as you're looking up. You know, from Kant's, why is there something instead of nothing?
Right.
To something as simple as Joni Mitchell, you know, in her Woodstock song, where she sings, you know, we are stardust, we're golden, we are billion-year-old carbon. And
Yeah. So it's, you know, it really is. It's such a deep, fascinating subject matter. You know, the concept of God being eternal, no beginning, no end. When you work in this field of study and play with it, what does that say to you?
Well, for me, I mean, I have a baseline, and I've been asked by my wife, especially, if I'm a Christian, and I'll say to her, I don't know if I'm a Christian, but I sure as heck know I'm a Catholic, which is
Universal.
Yes, but because it's become such a political thing these days about Christianity, right-wing Christians versus science, and all that. It's a topic that becomes somewhat muddled. Yeah, well, it becomes muddled. Well, first of all, for me, I find that I entertain quite a few notions when I'm looking at the stars, much like Pete. But my baseline for me is that I'm a Catholic. I have a belief in the doctrines of the Catholic Church.
I find that reassuring because I'm a practicing Catholic.
Oh, and there's no problem with being a practice. You could be a born-again Christian and have a full.
Where are you, if I can ask?
I have actually preached a Stardust sermon at the Unitarian Church in Providence. I am a Unitarian.
But you know what they say about Unitarians, though. Don't
What?
piss them off. They'll burn a question mark on your lawn.
Yeah, because if it's Big Bang and it's 13 billion away, it works against the eternity thing. I'm willing, by the way, to give God a little bit of leeway, because that 13 billion, that's as far away on an eternity basis. I could settle on that. Can you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good with me.
Okay, so the whole so the God thing is universal. He may have a few more planets, and Jesus may have made a few more stops.
Absolutely. There's no containing that just by the one universe or the beginning of one. You know, the speed of light is an absolute. So there is some kind of absolute figure in the universe that people measure things by here. And somebody who's an atheist, by the way, G.K. Chesterton once said that without God there'd be no atheists. I thought that was a funny little.
So with a couple of minutes left, let me not steal the show with questions that are. What do you want people to know about this field that you're so fascinated and so expert in now in astronomy? What should we know? What should we come away from this show thinking about?
I think awareness is what we're trying to achieve here, to make people aware that, you know, this stuff is there, it's available. We run public outreach. April 4th, the group will be at UMass Dartmouth, and we'll open up their observatory, and we'll help
We
them
may
with
not,
the show.
timing on the show, I'm not sure matches up to that, but in the bigger sense, you want people to get out from under the man-made light and take a look
Yeah.
at what's going on up there, right?
The other part is not to. I joined ASNI in 2007, and I thought up until then that I was pretty much a loner looking through my telescope, and that there were guys not my age who were not doing that. And then I joined the club, and I found that there were a host of people who were doing this. So it's a community event. It's not something you do on your own, and you can learn a lot, just like in any other pursuit.
What's the answer you're looking for when you do this?
I just think it's a sense of being. Not only do we live among the stars, but we are the stars, the universe becomes sentient. We are these atoms that have come together, and here we are. And I think that's a pretty amazing thing. And we look up at the stars, and we do a lot of thinking about it.
It's the ultimate neighborhood. It's the way to. I mean, people live pretty much. You can always tell how much a person knows by the expansiveness of their neighborhood, and astronomy gives you full reign to the whole shebang.
It's just great stuff. It's fascinating. Thank you for coming. And come
Thank
again,
you.
because I don't think we got to it all. You know what? I'd like to come down to the thing and see the thing
We
and
hope you
watch the
do.
thing. You know, and
Yeah.
we'll do that.
That'd be great.
All right. It's a pleasure to meet you guys.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled with what we just discussed here. It's settling and unsettling at the same time. Your State of Mind when we come back. Stay with us. If you can provide something fascinating like the previous conversation we've had tonight, you're more than welcome to tell us. Dan, I got some interesting stuff too. Here's the phone number where you can dial us, 228-1886. Leave a voicemail. We may put it on the air, but if you just have a show idea, don't worry about it. stateofmind@myiritv.com is the email, of course, and you can tweet and Facebook post to Dan Yorke Show, Yorke. That was a great exercise. I'm now going to look at the stars with a different perspective, and so will you. See you next time on My State of Mind. Thanks for watching. Good night.